We later learned that the son of the two adults called and stated he just killed his parents. He is now in custody and is facing charges. Peoria Fire Medical later confirmed that the adults were deceased.
There are cases where the charge makes sense once you know the person, and then there are cases where the charge makes no sense at all, because the more you know about the people involved, the less the outcome is possible to reconcile with anything. The Turk case is the second kind. Fraser Scott Turk, 63 years old, was a physician's assistant. His wife, Tina Turk, 56, was a nurse. According to family friend Rob Cagnetta, speaking to ABC 15 Arizona, the two had been married for more than 30 years. They had relocated to Peoria, Arizona from New York roughly 15 years before their deaths, according to multiple neighbors who spoke to local media outlets in the days following March 31st. They had built a life in a quiet, upscale neighborhood in North Peoria near 83rd Avenue and Jomex Road. They had 2 children, a college-aged daughter who was, as of that evening, away at school elsewhere in Arizona, and a son. Every neighbor who spoke to reporters described the same household: kind, open, the kind of family that hosted Halloween celebrations in the front driveway every year. The couple worked in medicine. They understood with professional precision the vocabulary of mental health crisis. They understood what it meant to file a court petition. They understood what the documents they were signing said about the situation inside their home. According to court documents obtained by Fox 10 Phoenix and reviewed by multiple national outlets, Fraser and Tina Turk had filed multiple mental health petitions involving their son, Jonathan Turk, over the years. 3 of those petitions were filed in 2026 alone. 3 formal requests for legal intervention in the first 3 months of a single year. Each one a documented acknowledgement that something in that house had passed the threshold of what a family could manage on its own. That is who the public is only now beginning to know. That is the couple whose names began appearing in homicide coverage on April 1, 2026. The charge is that they were killed by their son. Moving into the evening of March 31, 2026, the timeline established by court documents, a Peoria Police Department probable cause statement, and statements from the Peoria Police Department spokesperson Arisley Montes is specific and largely uncontested, because the primary source for most of it is the accused himself. At approximately 6:29 in the evening, according to the Peoria Police Department, a 911 call was placed to the department from the Turk family home near 83rd Avenue and Jomex Road in North Peoria. The caller was Jonathan Turk, 29 years old, the Turk's son, who had been living in the home with his parents. According to court documents obtained by Fox 10 Phoenix and reported by KTAR News, KSAZ, and multiple other outlets, Jonathan Turk told the 911 dispatcher that he had murdered his parents with a hammer and a knife. He told the dispatcher the reason was that he had become angry at them for putting him on medication. He told the dispatcher he had placed the weapons in his room. He told the dispatcher he would be standing outside the home with a water bottle in his hand so that arriving officers would be able to identify him. Officers arrived at the residence within minutes. They found Jonathan Turk outside the home, as he had said he would be. He was taken into custody without incident. According to the Peoria Police Department statement, officers then entered the residence. Inside, according to the probable cause statement reported by KTAR News, officers found blood on the kitchen floor and on the stairs. Fraser Turk was found at the top of the first stairway landing with at least one apparent stab wound. Tina Turk was found in the master bathroom with apparent head trauma. Paramedics declared both of them dead at approximately 6:42 in the evening, according to court documents, 13 minutes after the call. During the search of the home, officers found a bloody hammer and a bloody knife in a trash can in an upstairs bedroom, according to court documents obtained by Fox 10 Phoenix. These are the weapons Jonathan Turk had described placing there before calling 911. At a court appearance the following day, A prosecutor describing the scene to the court used the words, "extremely violent and brutal homicides." Jonathan Turk declined to make any further statements to investigators following his arrest, according to the probable cause statement. Now, the people at the center of this. Fraser Scott Turk, 63, had been a physician's assistant, according to family friend Rob Cagnetta. He had lived in Peoria for approximately 15 years after relocating from New York with his family. Neighbors who spoke to multiple local outlets described him as warm and welcoming. He was one half of a couple that had been together for over 30 years, that had built careers in healthcare and a home in a neighborhood where people knew their names. Tina Turk, 56, was a nurse, also according to Rob Cagnetta's account to ABC 15. She was the woman neighbors described to reporters as normal and very kind. She was the woman who, according to court documents, had been filing mental health petitions for her son. She understood what those documents meant. She was a nurse. She filed them anyway and kept filing them, because that is what you do when you believe there is still a path through. Rob Cagnetta, identified in multiple reports as a longtime family friend, wrote publicly in the days following the killings that the couple were two beautiful souls and an anchor of kindness and devotion, and that he was struggling to understand a loss he described as senseless. His words, reported by ABC 15 and multiple national syndication outlets, are the clearest public account of who these two people were to the people who knew them. The couple also had a college-aged daughter who was not present at the home on the evening of March 31st, according to multiple neighbors who spoke to 12 News reporter Sean Rice. She was at college in Arizona. Neighbors told Rice they felt profound sorrow for her, noting that in the span of a single evening she had lost both parents and, in a different sense, her brother. There was no manhunt in this case. Jonathan Turk was standing outside the home when officers arrived, holding the water bottle he had told the dispatcher he would be holding. He was taken into custody at the scene. There was no flight. There was no search radius. There was no period of uncertainty about his whereabouts. He had called the police himself, told them what he had done, told them where the weapons were, and waited. He was booked into Maricopa County Jail on charges of 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of second-degree murder, according to the Peoria Police Department. A judge set bond at $2 million, cash only. Those charges require some explanation, because to a general audience they appear redundant, and they are not. First-degree murder in Arizona means the prosecution intends to argue that the killing was premeditated. That Jonathan Turk, according to the prosecution's theory of the case, planned what he did before he did it. The standard of proof is intent formed prior to the act. Second-degree murder in Arizona means the prosecution intends to argue in the alternative. If a jury is not persuaded of premeditation, the second-degree charge is available as a fallback. It covers intentional killing without the requirement that the intent was formed in advance. Essentially, the prosecution is telling the jury, even if you do not believe this was planned, you can still convict on the finding that it was intentional. Filing both charges for the same deaths is standard prosecutorial strategy in cases where the question of premeditation may be genuinely contested. It is not an indication of prosecutorial uncertainty about what happened. It is an indication that the prosecution anticipates the defense will argue the mental state of the accused. And the mental state of the accused is, by every legal expert who has spoken publicly about this case, the entire question. Valley defense attorney Josh Kalsrud, who is not connected to the Turk case but was asked by 12 News to provide legal analysis, told reporter Sean Rice directly, "This case is not a matter of who did it. It is a question of why this person did this." Which brings us to what we do not know. We do not know the full mental health history of Jonathan Turk. Medical records in Arizona are confidential, and the outcomes of the 3 mental health petitions filed in 2026 have not been made public. We do not know what those petitions requested, what the court determined in response to them, or what, if anything, changed in the household as a result of their filing. We do not know whether any formal intervention was ordered, whether Jonathan Turk was ever involuntarily committed, or whether any professional assessment of his mental state was made in the weeks before March 31st. We do not know what medication Jonathan Turk was allegedly being pressured to take, or what condition or conditions that medication was prescribed for. We do not know whether he had been taking it, refusing it, or had recently stopped. We do not know the content of any conversations inside the Turk home on March 31st before 6:29 in the evening. We do not know what was said, what happened, or what the sequence of events was in the minutes or hours before Jonathan Turk made his decision. We do not know whether Jonathan Turk will enter a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, a guilty but insane plea, or any other plea. No defense attorney for Jonathan Turk had made any public statement as of the time of this report. We do not know what the competency evaluation process will show. In Arizona, when a defendant's mental state is raised as an issue, the court may order a competency evaluation before proceedings continue. Whether that has been requested or ordered in this case has not been publicly confirmed. We do not know what the 3 mental health petitions filed in 2026 documented. We do not know whether any of them described specific threats or incidents. We do not know whether the system, having received those petitions, had any legal mechanism available to it that could have changed the outcome of March 31st. These are not rhetorical questions. They are the exact questions that will determine how this case moves through the courts. Now the complicating question, and it is a genuinely difficult one. Jonathan Turk, by every public account, was known to his neighbors as someone who seemed unwell. He walked through the neighborhood with headphones on. He met attempts at conversation with what neighbors described to local news outlets as glares. One neighbor told Fox 10 Phoenix that she had always crossed to the other side of the street when she saw him, that she had felt a persistent, unspecific sense that something was wrong, that she had children and did not want to be near him. The Peoria Police Department had issued an endangered missing persons alert for Jonathan Turk in May 2023, when he was 26, noting in that public alert that he was on several daily medications due to medical conditions. His parents had filed 3 mental health petitions in 2026. The question the case forces is this: what legal obligation, if any, did the system have to act on what it knew? The argument on one side is straightforward. Mental health petitions exist precisely to create a legal mechanism for intervention when a family believes a person is dangerous. 3 petitions in a single year, filed by 2 healthcare professionals who lived with the person, represents an unusually clear and documented record of escalating concern. If the system has a mechanism, and the mechanism did not produce a result that protected anyone, including the person whose condition was being reported, then the mechanism failed in a way that demands examination. The argument on the other side is equally straightforward. Jonathan Turk was 29 years old. He was an adult. Arizona law, like the law in most American states, sets a high threshold for involuntary commitment precisely because the right to liberty is not extinguished by a mental health diagnosis. The confidentiality of medical records exists to protect patients, including patients whose families are frightened of them. The system cannot commit every adult whose family files a petition. The standard requires a finding of imminent danger, and imminent is a legal term with specific meaning. Both of these arguments are real. Neither resolves the other. That tension is not resolvable in a video or a comment section. It is a question for the legal proceedings ahead, for the legislature, and for the mental health policy community that has been raising it for decades without producing a satisfying answer. What comes next in this case procedurally is the following. The preliminary hearing that was scheduled for April 9th in Maricopa County Superior Court will determine whether the prosecution has established probable cause sufficient to proceed. Given that Jonathan Turk allegedly confessed to the killings in his own 911 call, that hearing is unlikely to produce a dismissal of charges. What it may produce is the beginning of a public record about what the defense intends to argue. After the preliminary hearing, the case will move toward arraignment, where Jonathan Turk will formally enter his plea. If a competency evaluation has been requested or ordered, the case may be paused until that evaluation is completed. Competency evaluations in Arizona are conducted by the Arizona Department of Health Services and can take weeks or months depending on the court's docket and the complexity of the case. If Jonathan Turk is found competent to stand trial, the case will proceed toward a trial date that, given the complexity of the mental health issues involved and the standard timeline for Arizona homicide cases, is likely at least a year away. If a not guilty by reason of insanity defense is entered, the trial will involve expert psychiatric testimony on both sides. It will revisit those mental health petitions. It will examine what the system knew and when. It will ask, in a courtroom with rules of evidence and cross-examination, the same questions that neighbors and community members have been asking informally since April 1st. If you want to understand what happens next in this case and why each development matters, follow the coverage as it unfolds. Every proceeding will add a new layer to what is still, at this point, an almost entirely open story. The Turk family, according to their neighbors, moved to Arizona from New York to build something. They had careers in medicine. They hosted Halloween celebrations. They filed paperwork repeatedly, trying to get help for a son they clearly never stopped fighting for. They were still trying in 2026. 3 petitions in 3 months. The paperwork is still in a court file somewhere in Maricopa County. Fraser and Tina Turk will not know what it leads to.